Greetings, fellow mercs. I am Temeshla Khan of the Kakurshi clan in Washington. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to build a thermal detonator for under $20. Okay, so for this build you're going to need several things, all of which are easily obtainable for low cost. I'll show them to you. Now that you have all of your tools and your parts, let's begin. You're going to want to start by opening up your ball. First thing you're going to want to do is cut these tabs off. For doing this, I recommend using a sanding wheel on your Dremel. It's the quickest and cleanest method of removing these tabs. Sand it smooth with some sandpaper. Your ornament should look something like this. For making the teeth on your thermal detonator, I recommend using a template. This template I found at thedentedhelmet.com. Once you have your template, you're going to want to cut it out using a straight edge and an X-Acto knife. Next, you'll want to cut this template in half. Now that you have your template half cut out, we're going to attach it to one half of your ball. I use clear Scotch tape because it allows you to see the template underneath it. For this portion, I recommend using the blue as the template parts that you intend to cut out. Line up the template as best you can with the edge of your sphere. If you find that your template is slightly too long, simply line up the edges as they should appear and trim the excess off of a more inconspicuous area, such as the back of the ball. Your thermal detonator should now look something like this. For cutting the teeth, I recommend a small saw blade attachment for your Dremel. Let's cut out our teeth. Remember, we're cutting the blue portions out. Your thermal detonator should now look something like this. The next step is to mirror the teeth on the other half of your sphere. Do this by putting the two halves together and tracing the outlines of each tooth. For best results, I recommend using a fine point Sharpie pen. To minimize confusion, I recommend coloring in the teeth that are going to be staying, so that eventually you will have a staggered tooth look. I also recommend labeling the front of your thermal detonator. This can be identified by the two small teeth adjacent to a large gap. They are the only two small teeth on your thermal detonator. Here you can see I have labeled my thermal detonator FT and FB for front top and front bottom. This will be important later on in the build. Now you are ready to cut the teeth. Remember, we are cutting the material not darkened in by your pen. Clean up the edges with your sandpaper to remove burrs. Your thermal detonator should now look something like this. Next, we're going to make the core. For the core, you're going to want to take your 2 1/2 inch ring material and mark from the edge 1 inch in all the way around. For ease and accuracy of cutting, I recommend making each mark approximately 1 inch away from each other all the way around. For this next step, I recommend using a large saw blade attachment for your Dremel. Your core should now look something like this. For this application, we're going to be using the larger half of the two parts. Clean up the edges of your core with sandpaper. Now it is time to mark the location on the core where the LEDs are going to be mounted. I recommend putting the two halves of the thermal detonator together to give you a better visual of where your LEDs are going to go. Here you can see I have found and marked my center point. Now drill out your center point. I recommend using a 1/8 inch drill bit. Now that you have your center hole drilled out, we can test fit one of your LEDs. Remove 3 necklace clasps from its container. Here we have our necklace clasps. We're only actually going to be using 1/2 of each clasp. Take each clasp, untwist, and discard the piece with the male end. The part you want is the female end. Now that you have all 3 female ends, you're going to want to clip the wire that runs through them. This part we don't need. You should now have 3 wireless female connectors. Now that you have your wireless female connectors, we're going to test fit one of them into your pilot hole.
It's imperative that you understand. Obi-Wan would never bother telling you about your father.
As you can see, this part is too big. To correct this, you're going to have to drill more material from your center hole. Now that you have removed sufficient amounts of material, your female connector should fit snugly in the hole. Next, mark the placement for the drilling of the second and third LEDs. I did this by eyeballing it. Greater accuracy can be accomplished by marking approximately 1/8 inch from each side of the center hole. Once you have the holes marked, drill them out. Again, taking caution not to drill out too much material. Once you've drilled your holes, your core should look something like this. Let's go back to the thermal detonator body. For the next several steps, you're going to want to rough up the body of your thermal detonator. Do this by taking a piece of sandpaper and simply scuffing the outside. Your thermal